Now, everybody's still at Isaiah 58 because that's where we're going to tell you a story that happened with me. Now, a lot of times when we tell you these things, these are kind of the way things evolved with us and the way things happened with us, the way things changed. And so many of you have heard this before, but this was before Mrs. D and I were married, and certainly before we were keeping. And I was just living the normal old Christian life, although I was really in the Word a lot, and as I know Miss Davis was where she was and everything. Well, I went over to this friend's house, Christian, and he knew I was coming. I knocked on the door, and he didn't come to the door. I heard him hollering, "Come on in!" He'd never done anything like that. So I opened the door. I said, "Come back here." And he was back in his bedroom, and he had his Bible open, and he was all excited. He said, "Come here and look at these verses. Read Isaiah 58. And he was reading the first part of it. And what had happened, the reason I'm leading up to this is because Psalm 37, I think. Psalm 37, I think it is, that it says, "Delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart." I had been reading that, and I had been asking God, what's that? How do I do that? How to delight myself in the Lord and give you the desires of your heart? What's that about? And I didn't know how to do any of that. Well, I'm reading, we're sitting at his house, and I'm reading through the first stuff is about the benefits of fasting. And I mean, there's a lot of benefits to fasting. And so all of this stuff, and I'm breaking chains and all these different things, and rebuilding the ancient ruins. But I made the mistake, and I kept on reading. Now, let's go again to the verses that Mrs. Davis read, and I want you to, as you're listening. Verse 13. If, now, we've got a conditional promise. If, because of the Sabbath, you turn your foot from doing your own pleasure on my holy day, call the Sabbath a delight, the holy day of the Lord honorable, and honor it, desisting from your own ways, from seeking your own pleasure, speaking your own words, then, there's the promise. You will take delight in the Lord. And there was I was stunned. Then you will take delight in the Lord. I will make you ride on the heights of the earth. I will feed you with the heritage of Jacob, your father, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken. I am telling you, I have heard those verses read from a Christian pulpit and not one thing attached to the Sabbath on it. This is a promise from Yahweh to you. Look at this, because you have come down and you've shaken my hand, and I don't you personally. And then it says here, folks, this is the promise to the church. Forget those Jews. You will ride on the heights of the earth. You will be fed with the heritage of Jacob, the mouth of Yahweh. Yes. And of course, they completely destroy it. It's a conditional promise. You will take delight in the Lord. Now, again, what I'm about to tell you, I had no idea what Sabbath meant. I just went, oh, okay, well, it changed, and I didn't even ever look it up for a long time. But I remember looking at this, and I want you to look. Starting in verse 13, we have the word, or we used to have the word, if. Okay. If, that's the condition. And then he gives you the points. Because of the Sabbath, okay? So we're going to go because of the Sabbath. And he says, here's the things you do. Turn your foot. Now, I find it interesting. I left out a word. I need to put it in there. And your foot. I find it interesting in the anger and the arguing over what day you worship on. We're trying to turn the other guy's foot. You know what Jesus says? If someone strikes you, turn the other foot. You turn you turn your foot. Okay? Does that mean we don't tell people the truth? No, that's not what the point is. But we're always arguing about what day you worship on when that's not even the argument. That's not what God's concerned about at all. I want you, the individual, you, the person that is supposed to be the temple of God, I want you turning your foot. What? From something. Doing your own pleasure. On my holy day. And you not just turn your foot, but you call, in other words, I verbally speak, you call Sabbath a delight. You call the holy day of the Lord, in other words, the Sabbath, but the holy day of the Lord honorable. And you honor it. Desisting from your own ways. You desist from doing what? Seeking your own pleasures. You desist from speaking your own words. This is important. This may sound like, okay, he's come up with another list. I'm not. God is. Speaking your own words, then. And there's the promises. What's the list? I want you to look up here. Look at that list. Look at that. You turn your foot from your own pleasure. You call. In other words, I verbally speak. God's Sabbath is a delight. When do I do that? Just on Sabbath day? See what I'm saying?
We're all waiting for it all week long.
That's right. While we're remembering, it's coming. The Sabbath day of Yahweh is a delight. The Sabbath day is honorable. Now you get to the Sabbath day. No. Can you honor the Sabbath day on a day other than Sabbath? You can. You can say, today I can say the Sabbath day is honorable. On the preparation day, what am I doing? I'm preparing for the Sabbath, but I'm honoring the Sabbath day by getting ready for it. So I can honor it, but when I get to it, it's really time to start honoring it. By doing what? He says it. I desist from my own ways. I desist from seeking my own pleasures. I desist from speaking my own words. Now, folks, then I'll make you ride on the heights of the earth. You'll take delight in the Lord. You'll take delight in the Lord. Make you ride on the heights of the earth. I'll feed you with the heritage of Jacob. The mouth of Yahweh has spoken. Now, this is a conditional promise, all focused on Shabbat. Now, I've got to tell you, in my ignorance, what I did. I was shocked reading this, and I was so excited. He wanted me to be excited about fasting. No one ever gets excited about fasting. But anyway, he was excited about it, and it's because he wasn't fasting yet. Anyway, he was excited. I was so excited to these verses, so I feigned excitement. But what happened was on that day, he was off that day, so it's probably on a Saturday, on Shabbat, so it was a good day to discover it. At that point, I did not know that Shabbat was the Saturday, okay? The seventh day. And I was, this is the day. But that was the last day, right then. The week before was the last time I watched a football game on Sunday. It stopped. It stopped. Because I went, now I was wrong on the day. But what was I stopped doing what? A lot of things stopped. Seeking my own pleasure. I would call the Sabbath day a delight, honorable, and I desisted from my own ways. And it was interesting. One of the things that began to happen was I began to really take delight in the Lord. It was very exciting. And I also, one of the things that I found, and it was hilarious, this part was funny. Again, I worked in a place where we had cubicles. If there was ever a more tortuous device devised by mankind and the evil, I don't know what it was. But you go in and you try to work, but on Monday morning, you are surrounded by it. Everybody's been off on the weekend, and I had on that side of me a guy, and on this side of me a guy. Our boss was a guy, and all of these guys were football fans. This one was Pittsburgh Steelers. This one was Kansas City Chiefs. The boss, and of course I voted with him, was Dallas Cowboys, but only so it would be good for me. I didn't care. At that point, at that time in my life, what happened was I quit caring. And I walked in on Monday morning, and one of the first things that I noted was, what is this strange feeling of freedom I've got? Of not being upset, of not being angry. Well, here it came. You know, they're arguing about whatever the ref did here, and that was a strike, and he should have let him get the 3 points. And because he was out far away, and it was a technical foul. But that was the thing that I started doing to these guys. They're yelling and screaming. They're very upset. Why? Their team lost or won, and I would start going. Now, with the Cowboys, was this in the third inning? And they're looking at me like nobody's this stupid. I did it with a straight face. Was this the third inning? Right when he took that 3-pointer from the outside. What are you talking about? That made him even madder. It was really hilarious. The red is going up. The temperature is rising, as it were. And why? Because but I was having a great time on the day after Shabbat. My Sabbath. But I wasn't. I don't care. I didn't care about college. I didn't care about the pros. I didn't care about any of it. This is actually where, in my life, God began to start bothering me about this thing of our competition and my competitive nature and my desire to win. Now, it was often in sports, but with me, it was often also in the argument. Now, that's with all of us. I've got to get in the last word. I've got to be right. No, I don't. I don't. It's not that I don't want to. I don't have to be right. God has to be right. Mankind is always wrong, at least if it's me. Folks, this you have no idea how freeing it is to start going. You know what? I don't have to get into argument. I don't have to win the argument. In fact, I'm probably not going to win the argument. It doesn't matter. The person's not going to be changed. And I don't have to be excited about my team and all of that stuff. Oh, we're number one. No, I'm not. I didn't win the game. I'm sorry to say the Cowboys win the game, but that doesn't happen that often. At least my understanding of it. My team won. I wasn't on that team. They don't know I'm existent. They don't care. They don't care because why? I can't afford a ticket. That's why they don't care. It's about money. Folks, what we're talking about here is not about money. It's about God's law. And if you want to delight yourself in the Lord and have that promise answered, what happens when you delight yourself in the Lord? Come on. He gives you the desires of your heart. Now, I need to tell you that doesn't mean, and I wish for a pony. I wish for a pony with long mane and, so and I want a pink one. No. It's the delight, the desires of your heart. What will he do? If you are delighting yourself in him, he will give you not what you desire, but he will give you what? Desires of your heart. Your heart's desires will change. Oh, I don't want that. You actually do. You do. You don't want, my heart desires that the Cowboys go to the Super Bowl. You ever thought about how inane that stuff is? I mean, you could even ask people that are interested in this stuff. I used to do it. Who can remember who won the basketball championship 3 years ago? So was that, now when Michael Jordan was around, you didn't have to worry about it. But you wouldn't remember who won the Eastern Conference, the Western Conference, or the Arctic Conference, or whatever it was. That people didn't remember. It's passing. It's going away. It's fading away. These things that we count as so important. What did you do in life? Well, I took a stick, and can you imagine speaking this to the angels that are going, what did you do to keep the Sabbath day holy? Well, I took a stick, and I got this ball, and I put the ball on top of a little tiny stick. And then I took my big stick, and I hit the ball into a bunch of grass. Well, if it was a good shot, I hit it into a bunch of grass. I may have hit it into a bunch of weeds. And then I would get one, there had to be a bigger club with metal on it, and I would whack the ball out, and then after a while, I put the ball into this little tiny hole in the ground. Let me get this straight. This is what you did with the hours of the life that you had? You did what? Do you hear how stupid that sounds? These people get paid millions of dollars for doing it. The athletes that go, well, when I got in my 40s, I started having organic brain syndrome. What am I trying to say? Problems thinking. Well, what did you do for a living? I was a boxer. I played it in the NHL or NFL. And you're going to get your head racked around all the time, constantly. And I remember Muhammad Ali, the greatest, all this stuff. He died the years before his death. He had horrible Parkinson's disease. The reason? They punched him. It wasn't often, but they punched him. And it rattled that head around in there. And that is one of the things that causes Parkinson's disease. It goes on, folks, but that's not what the point is. I mean, those are the points of reality, but here's what my Father says. Now, this is what, Isaiah 58, okay, take the list and go and say, Father, I need you to do this in me. I really want to be listening. You think about when people say, you need to keep the commandments. And they mean you need to go and obey those things. And they put, of course, as Paul would say, a burden that we never could do. And the difference between what the Bible really offers versus go and get to work for God and you got to work and work and work so that you can look like you're good versus what God says. Would you come over here and sit down beside me and just listen? That's all I want you to do. Just listen. Just sit down here. Let's be quiet and you listen. In fact, I'll be nice to you. I've set aside actually one day for you to come here and really listen. Oh my goodness. To turn my foot from my own pleasure. To speak, verbally call the Sabbath day a delight. The holy day of the Lord is honorable and shall honor it. Desist my own ways. there's we were doing these things. It changed our lives, and then we got around to realizing, oh wow, we really are wrong. But it's not about what day you worship on. And folks, all of this is to say God has a will. He's got His will. He's got the things that He is trying to put within us. He's got His ways. And we keep going, Paul said it, that we're not under the law anymore. And so when you take that out of context, what's the context it was taken out of? Louder? Justification. They took it out of that context and made it into something that it was not. And now it is taught from the pulpit, but wherever you go, the law of God doesn't stand. And then we marvel at a society that says it doesn't matter. If a murderer, premeditated murderer, let them out. And they go and kill somebody else. This is constantly going on now. And we are going, the people that died, the families that should be able to go, our government is going to protect this, is not so anymore. It's not so. Instead, we protect the evil. We protect killing babies. It goes on and on. We protect killing old people. During the pandemic, it is known full well that, what was that, Cuomo, was he governor? Right? Governor of New York. By his word, a whole bunch of people with COVID were shipped into the nursing homes. Thousands of people died because of his edict that that's what you do. That's about as dumb as you can possibly get, but he did it. And they were going to charge him, but guess what? It was charging him where? In New York State. And guess what happened? It was thrown out. What he did was murder. What he did, it may not have been premeditated, but he did it. Thousands of people died. And he is not being held accountable. And we in our country go, well, but it's all right. Why? He's a liberal. Now, I'm not here to talk about politics, but I'm here to say we have turned away from law. The church, the ecclesia, have turned away from law. And we're shocked when we look at the society that we're supposed to be the salt in. We're supposed to be the light in, and we go, why have they turned away from law? What a shock. Timothy.
The Spirit just told me to say this along those lines of murder. He's like, people in the church need to stop murdering one another and hate and all that stuff. He's like, compared hate to murder. So I think once it stops in the church, it can kind of move forward with some energy, positive energy.
That's what we're supposed to be. That's why we're the salt of the earth. They'll know you're my disciples not by your hatred for one another, your division for one another, but by your love for one another. And John chapter 17, 2 times in there, Timothy says that you're exactly right. The division caused in the church makes the world not believe. It says that they will believe when they see you are agape for one another, but they don't believe. Well, what a surprise that they don't believe. And I personally can't blame them. So anyways, Ms. Davis, anything else on this?
Yeah, just it's every day they continued to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God, enjoying the favor of all people. And the Lord added to their number daily. And just again, we're to be every day. It says God has a Sabbath rest for us. And that's, just there's so much in it, but they honored, yes, Shabbat or the Lord's Day, even that. I think the early Christians, I don't know what all was going on
this
then.
time it was Shabbat.
Yeah, but it wasn't, they were meeting all the time, but it's our worldview is what it is. If my view is, I just give God this one day and that He's satisfied with that, then I'll go to church on one day, but I won't talk about him. I won't want to hear about him. That I've already given him that day. You know, it's not about every day belonging to the Lord. It's not about me not being my own. It's about, well, I give him that. It's like, you know, you give 10% and that's enough. No, if it all belongs to the Lord, then it's up to him how it's used. But it's our lack of having a biblical view according to the word of what God says is his. Yes, a day that you honor, you know, sure, because Dr. Koch says it's a day that literally means to sit down and let the Lord, you know, minister to you, and you let him, refresh your a day to do that. So there is that, but also it's every day. It's not that, okay, I have one day that I give to the Lord. I'm so holy. Look at that. He really needs me to give one day to him. He wants every day to be his day.
And that's what you just read. They were daily.
Daily. And God was adding more to them. Every day was about speaking of him. Not speaking our own words, but letting him have dominion over us every day. And instead of just this one day, and then at the rest of the day, I talk like the world, act like the world, seek the world, I live like the devil, and give him 6 days, and I give God one day. I mean, that's what it's become. Out of the abundance of our heart, our mouth will speak. And if I think that God gets one day, that I just really focus on him, and the rest of the days I really focus on me, then I am not living biblical Christianity. It's not real. And I need to examine myself. I was looking at the verse that says, examine yourself. Test yourself to see really if Jesus Christ is living in you. And that's like it says in Peter, be sober-minded. The end of all things is at hand. Be sober-minded for the purpose of prayer. Staying in that mindset of, wait, this is the kingdom is now. The kingdom isn't by observation. The kingdom's within us. Am I allowing him to be within me? Am I allowing him to be the focus of my life, the love of my life? We've been reading in our ladies' meeting a book by Leslie Ludy, and she talked about, and I'll just share this real fast, the first chapter starts out with she's in a green room preparing, they're about to go on stage at some kind of something with Christians. And everybody's talking about, well, we watched Saturday Night Live, and we watched this, and we were in ha, 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 ha. All this worldly stuff. And they're right there, and this Christian group is about to go on and perform worship for the Lord. And all of a sudden they say, okay, we need to pray, guys. We're about to go out there, basically. I'm not quoting exact. And it hit her. Wow, what is wrong? These guys are about to go and lead in worship, and all that's coming out of them is the world and frivolous stuff. And then they're going to go out and worship God. It was that sense of something isn't right. And she began to look at her life and go, wow, we are off track. They were still discipling. They were still doing their ministry stuff. They were still very involved in all of that. But the focus and the sincere fervency for the Lord had grown weak in their life. And it's about, as God began to show them what they had substituted in their life for peace. Instead of seeking God in prayer and spending time in the Word, they were doing some of that, but dealing with the areas that were causing them to be like those guys too, being watered down.
Yeah.
The word dissipation's used in Scripture. It talks about quenching the Holy Spirit, and you think of that. I think of it as there's a fire going on, but you douse it with water and put it out. What's putting out his fire in me? He's been speaking to me a lot about that. What am I turning to that's dousing the flame of God in my life? It's dousing me being on fire for him. Jesus said, I would rather you be hot or totally cold, but not lukewarm. Because when I'm lukewarm, then he says it makes him nauseated enough to make him want to spew me out of his mouth. What is dissipating my life for him? The life of God in me. And that's what they began to look at. And I believe that's what God is saying to us. We can go, oh, the bad liberals, and it's them, and it's those bad people out there, and God's saying, what is dissipating my life in you? Why is that way? It's because we, God's people, have been dissipated by the things of this world, overcome by this world. He says, if the salt becomes tasteless, it's good for nothing anymore but to be trampled underfoot by men. We are being trampled underfoot in this country by men. The light is to be on a hill. But I can put that light out. I make that choice of what's going to dissipate that light in my life. Anyway, I believe that's the problem. Why is it the way it is? Because we've dissipated the flame of God in our life. It says, be continually filled. Do you think that in Acts, under the pressures that they were under and the persecutions they were under, they were kicking back and going, well, whatever. I believe they were meeting daily because it was. The God's Spirit had been poured out. They were under persecution, but they were meeting daily to encourage one another, to strengthen one another in the Lord. If I'm not being used to do that and be an encouragement for others to keep on track, keep moving forward in the upward call of God in Christ Jesus, then I'm encouraging them to go downhill. Anyway, that's just where God's been speaking to me loudly about where I am, where he wants me to be, and where his people have gone, where the reason, the why of what's happening.